The question was, what's the timeline for the feasibility committee and who makes the final decision? The way things are constructed, the feasibility committee has some short-term work to do that I mentioned earlier that we hope can impact either this year or the next year. The long-term portion of the feasibility study, I don't have an end date for them, but I would like them to begin working on this by spring of 2010 in terms of this feasibility around the high school piece, okay? As far as the decision-making process, they will make their recommendations to me. Yes, ma'am?
So who has the final decision? Do you?
The district does.
Are you the district?
In some ways, yes. Yes, ma'am. It may be the case that if they want to participate in sports, that they could take those sports at a comprehensive high school. There are rules of eligibility that would apply to some of those issues. But I think what we envision and what we see in education for the 21st century is that it's very important that students be post-secondary ready. And part of that post-secondary readiness and being competitive in the 21st century often requires greater specialization than any less experience in our education. And so for those children and families that are seeking that as an alternative is the kind of school that this would be. And
advanced school? Advanced children that are taking AP courses, let's say, in junior college? What type of children are going to opt into this school?
Well, without a particular program, and I'm not, I think what I say here can influence future issues, and there's been no decision made about that. But I think what you'll see happening more in PSD is that we'll be talking more about an academy approach in some of our schools, so that students begin early on in their high school education, identifying, say, if they're interested in engineering, that they would like to do more specialization. So I see it more regarding specialization, but without yet announcing any particular themes or programs, because you know how quickly rumors can spread. Yes, sir.
So is there any possibility, yes or no, that Lopez will remain open at any moment?
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
I can't say for everybody here, but I believe I can speak for the majority of the people that are in this room, that we bought our homes because we're here, because Rocky is here, because Weber is right there. If our children have to go to different high schools, and they put our different schools, and they put a high school here, two things. One, well, for starters, what is that going to do to the value of our home and the value of this absolutely gorgeous community? This is what
May I ask a parallel question? What has it done for Fossil Ridge? Has it decreased the value of the Fossil Ridge community to have a high school?
That's a big
My point is only that PSD does things in a quality way, and we have to have a long-range plan to do a quality. We would not want to take an elementary school without some refurbishing. We don't have the means to refurbish anything unless the taxpayers support us. So, I can take one more question. Yes, sir.
In regards to the feasibility study,
Yes.
how can you account for some of the costs then in this go-around that weren't accounted for during the feasibility study, i.e. the parking lots, those types of things? And then the other question would be, how will you ensure that there is adequate information for Lopez, given that it doesn't have as much study done on it as some of the other schools have seen. So how will you, as an executive, oversee that to ensure that Lopez data and information is equitable to the others that has been accumulated through small school studies or transportation studies or elsewise?
I think with regards to being thorough, by having experts who are able to get their hands on quality work, I'm not criticizing the quality of the facility planning committee work. What I'm simply saying is that we have a lot more work to do, and it has to take into account many other factors that haven't been factored in, such as transportation. So by having the director of transportation on the committee, who can then authorize the necessary studies so that we get a complete picture to be able to respond to these issues, that will be the way I assure that we have a quality study conducted.
So they'll be given the resources to assess cost, not just benefit, to possible facility changes.
Yes, but I don't anticipate that. I wouldn't want you to leave with the impression that that will be very costly to us. We have a lot of the existing data. It's a matter of asking the right question of the data to get the resulting information from it.
But you don't have data related to, say, transportation studies related to increased parking lot size or anything like that. So those costs, how are those going to be accounted for in this process? Because those have to be weighed against the benefit costs.
True. And I think that those would have to be estimates that would be put together by those that have the professional expertise to give us that.
But you assure us that that'll happen in this process, because we feel like we're a little bit behind the curve as far as data available on impacts to us versus others, because we haven't been included in other studies.
We went in the small group study because we're not a small school, so that's.
I think I've answered your question.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you very much. So, everybody, before we go, I want to make it clear.